What is up? Welcome back to the Best Ball Boardroom. It is Monday, July 17th. DeAndre Hopkins is a Titan. Joe Mixon has a new contract. And straight from the NBA streets, it is great to have him. He's actually seeing daylight. He is going outside. He is 200 or so drafts in. It is crazy. It is great to have with us today, Mr. Dink, Drew Dinkmeyer. How's it going?
It's great to be here. A boardroom on a Monday with a Tampa base is just like bringing me back to my old finance days and my old finance roots on a summer best ball afternoon. So feeling good, Justin.
You still make it down here to Florida occasionally, right? You got some family.
Yeah, I've got family in Alachua, and then I've got friends in South Florida. So I get down there a couple times a year for sure.
It's good. Because, Alachua is like basically Gainesville. It's basically where UF is, and it's funny. Usually the people here that I know, my wife's a UF grad too. It's like, those are the townies. Those are the locals.
Yep.
So whenever you reference it, I always get a little chuckle. I'm like, yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Too funny. Well, all right. I think you were just telling me, what is the number that you were in? How many drafts in this summer?
I'm 233 completed so far.
233.
I've got another like 50 slows ongoing. So
I can't deal with you.
The goal is 521 total was my initial allocation, 521 drafts. And I've got a pacing, I've got a calendar. I have to do a certain number of drafts each day. I've got all
just 521. Like random precision. No,
it's just, I looked at all the contests that were available at the time of creating my plan.
Ooh, that's short-sighted.
And basically went through, this is all the stuff I want to play. And then, the stuff that comes up like later in the year, if I'm pacing enough, I'll get to it. But these are like the main contests I want to play. Here's how many dollars I want to allocate towards it. And the number ends up being 521.
I hear that. All right. Well, how's it going, Brian? Good to have you. Anyone else in chat? Let's hear it. Happy, good afternoon. And hopefully we can. Let's do that right now. We will jump into a Best Ball Mania. We'll see if we can get some people in chat joining us. We are waiting on about four people. Close. 4 people. That'll go pretty quickly. Yeah. And there it is. That is filled. Let's see what we end up getting. But we get the 10 pick. My second least favorite. I've been hating the 9 spot literally how are you feeling about spots this year? Do you have a preference? Is it just the one, or do you have like others?
It's different on each site. On Underdog, I think I'm okay with really 1 through 5. 6 is a little bit uncomfortable at times because I'm not drafting a ton of Kelsey this year. And then 9 and 10 is uncomfortable because I can't control the stack partner that I'd like to get. So it's like, do I take the player that I think is the best, or do I take the player that I think I'll get some stack value on? And it's just an uncomfortable. I've ended up with a decent bit of Bijan from those spots, whether I take him at 10 or whether he comes back to me. And so it's just an uncomfortable spot to draft from for sure.
And especially, if you use ETR rankings, we actually have the guys that are like 13 and 14 that are ranked like close to 10 and 11 with Devontae and such. I did not upload the newest rankings that include yesterday's Hopkins, so we'll at least adjust there in real time. But yeah, for me, like AJ Brown has the ADP of what was it, like 9.4 last I saw.
Yeah.
9.2. And I've been getting very, very little of him because I'm not willing to draft Jalen Hurts with the 16th pick. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not going to get it. So I'm guaranteeing that I'm not getting my stack partner. And I already think that I like some of the other guys. I like Devontae better than him. With CeeDee Lamb, I think it's really close, but Lamb, I at least can then get Cooks and Dak in this same area. So it feels like a gap and I should be forcing some, but because AJ Brown has such, game breaking upside, but I don't know if he has season breaking upside. And if he does, you want Jalen Hurts and I'm missing out. I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I was in a draft yesterday where I saw someone take AJ Brown at the 4 spot and got the AJ Brown Hurts Devonta combo to start, which I was like, that's interesting. Maybe I should do that for a few just to kind of mix it in. And then later that night in another draft, I got Jefferson Hurts Devonta from the 1 spot. And I was like, this feels so superior that it's like, how many combinations of this do I really want? And so it's tricky for me.
So as expected, the first 8 go, maybe not the exact order, but pretty much the 8 we see. 9 goes AJ Brown. I've got Bijan here. You want to reach for not reach, but is there a wide receiver?
Yeah, Bijan's fine. I sometimes I'll take CD there and hope that I get Amon-Ra, but it rarely works. It almost always results in me kind of back in the same spot.
Regardless. And I have so many CD Amon-Ra at 12-13 that I don't need to reach to get it. And I mean, you could go wide receiver, but then there's a chance that you also get locked out of the other wide receiver, and now you're drafting one of these running backs to go with it, and the Bijan random wide receiver is definitely a stronger play than I guess the wide receiver here in one of these next tier.
Yeah, totally agree.
So we're going to get Devontae or Amon-Ra. I guess there's Garrett Wilson as well. ETR is a little lower on Garrett Wilson. I think just there's some risk. There's a slower offense that we're expecting with Rodgers. Agree there? Do you have him a tier below, or?
It's tough for me. I do agree. I mean, I trust the math work that, Jack and Mike and Mark Dankin bringing the team put together and stuff. So I'm fine. I have Amon-Ra clearly ahead of Garrett. The one that's tricky for me is just, I think Adam, the one that's tricky for me is Waddle, really. Adams and Amon-Ra clearly ahead. The Waddle ranking we have is clearly ahead and closer to that first group. And that's where I have a little bit more disagreement, where I'm taking Wilson if he falls to me where it's Wilson and Waddle. I'm taking Wilson to get my exposure there to Wilson because I know I'm going to get plenty of Waddle with the ranks the way they are right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, just from a 13 for Garrett Wilson, Waddle at 16. Yes, we can you can even think that Waddle's going to have a better season, but it makes sense to split your exposure and get some of the Garrett Wilson aspect. What I do like about Garrett Wilson is that Breece Hall is falling to around that same spot, and you can easily get Rodgers later. So for the ones and I actually like this even a little more, first off on DraftKings, but then also the smaller formats of DraftKings where I can just go on slot. And so in that $5.55 or the $44, I've got a couple of decent teams that are first round pick, then Garrett Wilson, then Breece Hall, then Rodgers later on. I think with
you can sometimes snag those with Cooper in the fourth as well, which starts to get really
Cooper
nice
all the time. I don't know how people love Cooper. And I'm willing to do it for that stack, and you kind of need it at this 40 spot, which is ADP I think is 38. So would love to do it, but gosh, I feel like I miss out on that one so much.
Yeah. What are your favorite areas to draft in the draft?
Yeah, so I mean, in general, I've always been a number 1, number 2, and then just from the gap in players, and I think Justin Jefferson is honestly a substantial gap amongst the others as well. So there's bias there. For me, if I'm outside of the top 2, 3 to 7 are pretty similar to me. I just don't feel strong enough between get out of Jamar Chase. So the Kupp, Tyreek, McCaffrey all feel really similar. And then Eckler and Kelsey, I'm fine with either as well. I just hate this 8 to 10, 8 to 11. I would then go back to 12, where I love just being on the turns because I can control my stacks. And even when you're at the 2 or the 11, you can think, okay, well, I'm going to get this. This person already drafted QB. They'll fall to me. And you get screwed, and you wouldn't have drafted that previous player knowing it. But if you have both of them, you can guarantee.
Yeah, Saquon going 3.1. We're getting
no QBs in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, it's and still Saquon falling that far is interesting. I really have enjoyed drafting from the 2-3 spots because there's a couple, round 2 and 3. I think there's some manipulation you can do effectively in those 2-3 spots, and then when you get into I guess it's the rounds let's see, that would be round around 10, 11, where you get the QB stuff around there. Cousins that you're kind of manipulating around. I think there's some fun pressure points that you can exert on your opponents in those spots. That's just the unique way that the draft board has panned out on Underdog.
Yeah, no, I feel that. And I think an example there is Cousins. Almost, Cousins' ADP is brought up so much because Justin Jefferson's drafted here, Addison is drafted in this area, and Hawkinson is drafted in this area. So this player is rarely does Cousins make it past like 99. But when he does, if you actually somehow he does, he almost then makes it back to like 118, 119, 120. But I think from a pure projections, he really should be closer to this like late 10th round. Daniel Jones is the opposite, and we are on the board. Let's get back. Okay. I'm just going to put this in the queue. This is where I draft Lamar a decent amount, but we also have Debo, Keenan Allen. We are one running back, one wide receiver. There's no real stack aspects unless you wanted to reach for the builds.
No. I'm fine with all the top three there. Debo,
give me one.
Keenan, Lamar. Let's go Lamar.
Okay.
It's an interesting year with Lamar because in past years you felt Lamar was so tied to Andrews in terms of stack value that you felt like you kind of couldn't do this. But this year now you feel like you can do this. I will also note that I am one of the bye week bros. So I am more likely to do that when I do not have Devontae Adams as my lead wide receiver there, because then I kind of know, all right, I'm going for Flowers and Bateman if I can. Now I'm all the way in on week 13 buys, and I'm really limiting myself kind of later in the draft to be able, in some of our values, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow come from that week 13 as well. So the Amon-Ra makes it a little bit easier for me there as well.
Gosh, so many players in that week 13. For the weekly winner strategy, I like actually attacking that week specifically because you have 3 of the elite QBs going there. Keenan Allen gets taken, which would have been an easier pick here. It's a bit of not a dead zone, but a wash zone, you could call it. I kind of look for correlation, but we don't have any here.
I take ETN in this spot and just basically the next round back. Occasionally you get like a Madison that comes all the way back, but usually it's a wide receiver range. And so I kind of am basically like, okay, I'll just default to my next 2 picks are going to be in the wide receiver range or wide receiver tight end. But that's the tougher pocket there if you don't get one of those guys to fall.
So looking through this, we only have 1 wide receiver through 4, which is a little rough, but we are hoping is pick 82 and pick 87. Both are slightly above ADP on the Ravens guys. They're at 88 and 90. So we should be able to get these 2 because no one should be fighting with us for them. The only time you can't get them usually is when like you get one of those just crazy wide receiver, avalanche style rooms, and now all of them getting pulled. We'll still get 1. But decent chance we get 2 there. When you're building for that, as you said, that's 2 now wide receivers with bye week 13. But also, that'll give us, let's say, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. We can get 58 and 63 and still finish with 5 quality wide receivers.
And the way the draft lays out, that's usually the case. So, like, for me, if I'm wide receiver heavy early, that portion of the draft that we're talking about, the like 80s and 90s, becomes a little bit more of a running back area that I'm like picking my favorite guy between like P. Ryan, AJ Dillon, or I'm getting a quarterback. If I missed out on a stack, I can get into the Anthony Richardson range there or whatnot. But if I've gone running back heavy early, I know, okay, I need to hit that area hard with wide receivers, and it will be taking them a little bit above ADP to make sure that I get them. And when you have Lamar on top of it, it's like, okay, that it all fits.
Yeah, no, I feel that. One thing worth kind of referencing here. So pick 3, Chase, Higgins, got Burrow in the 4th. What I do think is interesting is if you look at Burrow's ADP here, it's 44.5. Underdog drafters have basically said, we're not going to reach for him in the 3rd. We're going to let him fall, and his ADP to that. If you look on DraftKings, his ADP is 34 on a site where quarterbacks are less valuable because they make up a lower percentage of your overall team points because of PPR and such. Their stacking, in my opinion, is also a little less necessary, a little less valuable because the correlation is not as great as it is on Underdog where touchdowns are so valuable. Over there, you can just rack up points by catches, which a QB just getting a whole bunch of underneath catches doesn't help them. So like, it doesn't make sense. It's so frustrating over there. It's not even worth going for the double Cincy over there.
I've had to adjust a bunch to like trying to take Mahomes when he's there if I have Chase early or Higgins and like build through that route instead of, because I just know that the the Burrow is almost never coming back. It's just really, really rare that it does come back. Whereas on UD, I think you can be pretty confident that if you start with those two, and I think the UD drafters are a little bit more aware of stacking than DraftKings drafters, just generally. I think UD is a little bit of a sharper environment on the whole.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And then going back to the DK, Bateman-Zay are picks 101 and 105 are DK. Yeah. You've got Michael Thomas and Cortland Sutton, who are like half a round ahead of both of them. It's interesting when wide receivers are just so much more valuable over on DK, and somehow they just fall around past what they are over here.
Yeah.
All right. We
have the Fields. My God.
Oof, that would have been nice with the Bijan. Yeah. DJ Moore gone.
You just can never count on that though. Like
no, not
you can't count on them falling 10 spots past.
So for me, even though like you've got a falling, I think you almost have to go wide receiver
100%,
given our build.
100%. Yeah.
This Chris Godwin steam has been very interesting. I want to avoid week 13. Not that it matters now, but I'm going to Marquise, Jackson, and Godwin. We probably want to aim for those. Preference for the first one.
Marquise would be my take here. Okay. I've always been a Marquise Brown guy.
Yeah, I think right now, like the risk, the Kyler aspect is already so baked in. He still was a target hog with Colt McCoy last year. I'm not really, I don't care like about the reports that they're going to run more. I believe they will run more, but if you look at the numbers, there's just no way a healthy Marquise Brown doesn't have insane volume in that offense.
Yeah. Yeah. And then sometimes in that spot, I might play the ADP game and be like, okay, I'll take Godwin and hope Brown comes back. But there's enough of a gap here with teams that look like they need wide receivers, although 5.12 just took Madison, that I would be a little bit less comfortable in assuming that I would get that spot kind of back. So, and this is where these 10, 11, 2, 3 spots, you really want to manipulate and try to pressure and take advantage of the teams, like really know the builds behind you. It's really important when you're drafting.
And having a draft board is just so much more valuable. And yes, I mean, obviously we're able to see it here, but okay. Yeah. ADP Chris Godwin, or do we want to go with the Seattle? I don't expect us to be drafting Geno.
Yeah, we're not drafting Geno, so I'd be fine going Godwin here and take me ADP value on a guy that you probably aren't getting much of with our ranks as is.
Correct. I like that. And also, if Godwin has a 3-touchdown game in week 17, like a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, may have, had big games last year, and you don't have the stacked partner to go with it, that's okay for this year.
Yeah.
Where you're not going to have virtually any, very, very, very few Baker, or if it's not even Baker, but stacks. So you can kind of draft that knowing like, hey, in Godwin's ideal scenario where he has a huge game or a huge season, I'm not actually losing ground to someone who also stacked with the QB.
Yeah. And so we're right back on pace to be totally on pace with our wide receiver running back exposure. And we just tilted a little bit of it earlier into also guys like Bijan. I think the role is super valuable, as we saw last year with Atlanta, in their ability to create efficiency for running backs, and his skill set and talent level is definitely better than Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley and Cordell Patterson. So very excited about him. And then ETN is just like one of those things for me where it's like running back on an offense I feel is very, very solid. Like I don't have any concerns about, that's going to play from ahead a ton and probably going to get a lot of soft touchdowns just based on kind of schedule, opponent, divisional benefits that the Jacksonville schedule will provide. So like, I love drafting running backs on teams that I feel really good about the offenses. And ETN is, for me, a 4th round guy that I'm very, very comfortable with.
I mean, spoken like a true DFS guy. What do we want our running backs to be? Home favorites, like just easy game. Let's go on. We got a couple questions in chat. I'm going to scroll back a little, but specifically for you, Dink, why do you draft so much?
Honestly, I love it. It's just, it's something that I really enjoy. I also do think that there is a lot of the edge is diminishing each year in best ball, but I think it's still a pretty high edge environment. And in terms of whether I'm trying to max all these tournaments, I'm trying to max the lower dollar tournaments. Like I'm not going to max the 555 on DraftKings. That would be like 75K in a single tournament. That's probably out of my range. But the $10, I can max that, and that's comfortable for me. The BBM, I enjoy maxing. I think the prize structures on BBM are really fun with the regular season prize structures as well this year. So I just enjoy it. And for me, seasonal fantasy football is very difficult for me to play once NBA gets going. And even the few weeks before NBA, I'm working so much on projection work there. So I don't play a lot of season long leagues. I have my home league, and I might do like one high stakes league with Leone that we'll do together, and that's it. So this is my exposure. And look, you got to go through the tilt pyramid each Sunday, right? The tilt pyramid starts with your DFS lineups. It works to whatever like MME set you had, like high stakes, single entry lineups, then your MME set. Then if you played any cash games and you have some cash games left over there, and then you work your way to best ball. And I always want to be able to work my way to best ball at the end of the day and feel like I have something to feel good about. There's this one team that had a really good best ball week, and then I can sleep well at night.
We need to create a graphic of this, because now Underdog's weekly winners format is that very last one. Like at the very end of everything else, do I at least have one weekly winners team that is live for maybe getting a couple thousand?
That goes right before the seasonal best ball. The seasonal best ball is when you really know. And then like your home league is like, oh, okay, maybe I'll win the home league.
I mean, some of us don't even have seasonal anymore. So all right, Goddard just went. It would have been an interesting decision if we had at least consider that. I do like Brandon Cooks.
I like Cooks too, and there's a little bit of correlation, but I think you get for sure one of the stack partners here, and then you can make that decision if it comes back around again.
That's fair. I think from an output wise, and like there's other teams that I want Brandon Cooks on. Like I have so many that I've got him with Dak, and like I think he is when you consider the type of wide receivers and his like how he wins, Dak is going to win in a lot of those games as well. There's some injury aspect where like if CeeDee Lamb goes down, that's when Cooks has his best season. Maybe that hurts Dak some, but I think the most likely outcome is you just got high levels of passing. The offense actually needs to throw more than we're expecting. They're not as slow as we're a little scared of. And in those situations, that's where, Cooks has a good year. But no, I mean, give me the double stack. If we had Andrews, then here we could go with one wide receiver.
But doing it that way also, which I Flowers is the pick here, but doing it that way also insulated us a little bit, right? In the sense that if you wanted to consider Cooks, you're at least allowing a pick after you to eat that spot, so you have a better chance at getting Bateman back. Whereas if you took Cooks there and you wanted to like risk like the ADP value and like, okay, I'll get one of Bateman or Flowers. Well, you're vulnerable to them both getting sniped, and now you have no stack. So you have to at least take the first stack candidate. I think you take both there, which we did. But if you were even considering the Cooks aspect, you got to let them fall and give yourself a little bit of room to have one of those two guys fall.
All right, theory question for you, because I think this is a challenging one that in the moment, we don't really think about it, but when you look at a larger exposure, it comes up. Bateman and Zay Flowers, our rankings are a little ahead of ADP on them.
Yep.
Not crazy, but enough. And so what that means is that you were probably taking him maybe up to 5 picks early, which again, not a big deal. But we also have Bateman ahead of Zay Flowers. And like you could say, all right, I'm just going to take whichever one's available because, Zay Flowers is in ADP like 2 behind. But from a distribution wise, you're going to end up then with like 80%, 90% of Bateman and maybe 10, 20 of Zay, because it's not just that one pick aspect. It's like, well, for the 5 picks before, I'm always grabbing Bateman, and only on that one pick or when I've already drafted Bateman do I go Zay. So this example, we can get them both. That's great.
Yeah.
And other times when you need a wide receiver here, but like you're only going to get one or you don't have Lamar, do you force yourself ever to say, I'm going to go Zay? Is it from like, my team's really good from the early and I want a late bloomer in Zay? Like, how do you play that off?
For me, I build out my exposures during the course of the season. And the way that I think of the course of the draft season, the way that I think about it is like the first, let's say 50% of each contest that I'm playing is just like I'm taking rankings. I'm like drafting how I normally would. I'm not adjusting anything. And then I got a base level of exposure that I have. And then before each draft that I'm getting into, I sort of check those pockets of, am I outsized in any direction? And then I file those notes away in fast drafts because I'm not always able to react fast enough. In slow drafts, I like take my time and I look through it all. And then I will start to balance out. I'm always going to have that allows me to create a base that is the foundation of how I would normally draft, and then kind of massage the edges of my exposure. So this year I'm going to have a decent bit more Bateman than Flowers, but I'm going to massage that exposure where I'll have Bateman. I think I've got Bateman right now at, let me see. I've got him right now at like 15% of my total exposure, which is a little bit tilted off based on like high stakes drafts and whatnot. And I've got Zay Flowers at 10%. So like I'm sort of managing it within those two.
Okay. I think that makes sense. And yeah, for me, a lot of times the ADPs change and like it kind of solves it for you. So you don't want to force it early on. I could see it changing as news or camp reports come out, but it really feels like those two are going to be pegged together for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
All right.
This is
talk to me about Freiermuth.
Yeah, this is the part of the draft that we don't have to talk about.
Nope.
That's the part of the draft that is a little bit tricky for me, because if you draft off our ranks, you'll get a ton of Freiermuth. I would probably be taking Antonio Gibson here, personally, as my play. I don't think we need the 6th wide receiver yet. I think you can get the 6th wide receiver on the way back if you want it there. We're not taking another quarterback with Lamar. So for me, it was, tight end if Freiermuth there is a discussion point. I like him best when I've got a Seattle piece or a Pittsburgh piece already. And then otherwise I get into these positions where I have to be really careful about, like, Freiermuth for me is a decision point where you're investing capital that suggests it's going to be more likely a 2 tight end team, not necessarily for sure a 3 tight end team. And that's where I sometimes might take the extra running back, knowing that that's going to create 2 tight ends for me later. So it's kind of a difficult decision. With our ranks, you'll get a ton of Freiermuth. I try to make sure that I'm getting it in a way that's correlated. Or let's say like I didn't have a quarterback yet, and there wasn't a Richardson on the board to take unstacked or something like that.
Pick it later.
I might go pick it later. So I might be setting that up later, those types of things. But the Freiermuth ranking with where it is, and I think Mike Leone talked about this on the Establish the Edge pod, it is this range for drafting tight ends is a little bit uncomfortable.
Every position in my mind, though, is kind of uncomfortable if you already have an elite QB. I like these running backs, but I definitely accept that there's a lot of risk here. Quick, I'm pretty sure we're aligned on running back here. Someone jump out to you. We've got
Achane for sure. It's the correlation.
Perfect. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's
correlation. Second highest ranked running back. You're not taking Robinson and Gibson together. Also bye week diversity for the bye week bros. Easy selection for me there.
I could see Robinson and Gibson together. I think for this lineup, I agree. Achane was definitely the play from a correlation and like rankings wise. Also, New England now slight favorite to get Dalvin Cook. I don't know. Miami's been a plus 200. Not that these markets really matter because they're so illiquid.
If Dalvin Cook does sign with Miami, my exposures are in trouble because I am loaded up on Dolphins running backs right now.
Okay. I've got no Jeff Wilson.
Okay, I've got a little bit. I have a ton of Mostert and a ton of Achane.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think like there's just been too much value if you knew right now that Cook wasn't going to sign there.
Yeah.
But to the Robinson and Gibson, I think those are the archetype of running backs that Leone showed us in his analysis, and that fits in with my ping pong kind of overall theory, as well as betting on that offense, that they could both be good draft picks together. It's late enough in draft capital that it's not going to cost you if one really sucks, but also looking at their structures, like you could see ways where across the season, Robinson gets his 18 to 20 carries a game. Gibson gets maybe 6 to 8 carries, 3 to 5 catches, and like the team's better than we thought and they both work. Or one of them really steps up above the other, or you get a ping pong aspect. So that's actually a running back group that I would be okay with pairing them. But yeah,
I'll throw another factor in there that can add to your argument. Eric Bieniemy, we saw a lot of running back ping ponging in Kansas City over the years. So there's some sort of merit to the idea that the coaching staff and the way that they use the running back position might also help reinforce that kind of production as well.
Yeah, and in general, I'm bullish on him kind of having a lot more control, obviously, of that offense. Creativity. I like Curtis Samuel as well, because I think Curtis Samuel is the type of player who, even if his volume doesn't substantially increase, just the way that they're using him and efficiency, I think will. Seeing this right here, solid team. I can't believe they let you both get the Ravens receivers. But I mean, the thing is, Brandon Cooks was available across. So it's not like there weren't wide receivers that people were going. And we actually drafted both of them slightly above ADP. So I wanted to bring up that comment, because if you draft Lamar late, it is a decent idea to plan on you're going to go for at least one of those two wide receivers, possibly both. And if you know that, then how we adapted earlier by grabbing ETN, it makes sense.
Yeah. The other thing about that A-chain pick is I think that also sets this up as this would be a fine 5 running back team, which allows us the 3 tight end flexibility to still get 8 wide receivers if we wanted. It allows us some flexibility in different positions towards the end of the draft. So feel really good about that pick in a number of different ways.
Always going 5 running back when I grab these guys that early. Okay, there's a guy I really like right here, Rondale Moore.
Okay.
Argument is we have Marquise Brown as well. And I think this is a decent Kyler team where...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Okay. Both with Lamar with the late bye, we can definitely survive zeros from Kyler early on. And our goal here really is, in those playoff weeks, how do we get unique? How do we get upside? And having a Lamar Kyler really feels good there, especially when it's double stacked.
Yep. The only challenge that we have with it is our ranks are so far behind Kyler on ADP that you have to reach a little bit from our ranks, and then you're also trying to feel out the room with Kyler, because the range on Kyler ADP is very, very wide. So what's your position once you've built this situation out? Are you just next shot around ADP that I get, I'm taking it? What's your approach with Kyler?
So let's discuss. His ADP is 153. We have pick 154.
Yeah.
We could wait there. I mean, there's no other Cardinals that have been drafted that people are fighting for him. But as you say, some people just really like him and they want to reach on him.
Yeah. He's a guy that you can feel like you don't need to stack, right? Or you can say I can get to Ertz or McBride later.
Okay. So I'm looking here and I'm I want to do a 2v2 in my head of who am I giving up that I'd be taking vice versa. At this time, we need one more running back. Jalen Warren I actually like, and I think he's a tier above, but I don't think he's a deal breaker for our team.
Yeah.
Wide receiver, I don't know. Nothing here really jumps out. Same thing with tight end. We'll do a 2v2, but honestly, I'm considering just saying, hey, we're drafting Kyler.
At 135?
Because, this is the only way to guarantee. He's 153.
Yeah.
So let's think. What other player would you want to go here?
So I would roll the dice. I would take a running back or a wide receiver. It would be Warren or Mooney would be the. Oh, did Mooney just go? Yeah,
Mooney just went.
Then. Yeah,
so it'd be our 5th running back. We lose flexibility there. Could go Dalton.
I'll leave it to you.
We don't pit. We don't have to pit. I'm doing it. All
right.
So
there we go.
Now here's what we got to do is think through, in this next 2v2, how much value did we lose by not drafting Jalen Warren and who's available? And most likely that's going to be someone like Roschon Johnson, Devin Singletary. How much value is Jalen Warren to those guys? Decent. I do like Jalen.
Yeah.
But then it's, if we lost out on Kyler, who would our next player have been? And we didn't have any other stacks building here. So probably would have been Mac Jones and Hunter Henry.
Yeah.
Or one of those guys with a late tight end that we like. Looking through, Bryce Young and Hayden Hurst.
Yep. Those would be the options. I do think, to reiterate on the Kyler point, if you're going to draft Kyler, I think on Underdog specifically, the 20-round drafts are a little bit different. You have more room for error. But on Underdog specifically, the best case scenario for Kyler is with an elite quarterback that has a late bye week.
Yep. 100%.
The elite quarterback that has an early bye week is very sketchy. And then you get into the other ways to do it are all three late quarterbacks with Kyler. But in those situations, you often have to take Kyler kind of as your first quarterback. And it gets really dicey on whether you're going to be able to connect two other stacks late. So this is the absolute best way to draft Kyler if you're drafting Kyler in these large field tournaments.
100% agree. And if you look at the QBs and their bye weeks, I mean, they're almost all week 10 or week 13. If we go through the top guys, Jalen Hurts is 10.
Yep.
Mahomes is 10.
Herbert is the risk.
Allen. Okay. Yeah. Allen's 13. Lamar, we know, is 13. And
Fields is
13. Like, it's crazy. Especially those, like, three of them being week 13. So it does work really well. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, in a vacuum, 135 for Kyler feels really bad. But you know what? We're also making bets on this Arizona team with two of the pass catchers here. And I just don't think there's that much of a gap in the players that were available then that compared to what would be available at our 154 pick coming right up.
Which we will see. We'll see. Yeah. We'll be able to see what the 2v2 was, right? Because we knew it was going to be Jalen Warren was essentially going to be our pick. Yeah.
On it, I think I would have gone Darnell if that was available.
If Mooney was available, yeah.
We've got really strong. And once we were saying, hey, we're drafting our fifth running back, we also are immediately missing out on any more running back dropping value. Just looking right now, Roshan just went. Tyler Algier is potentially falling.
I would not want to take Algier on a Bijan team, though, personally.
I agree with that. I think it's a very different bet from a Gibson.
From a 2 mid-round. Yeah. It's like you need Bijan to be the guy for this team to.
Right. But the other thing is, we don't have to take a running back here.
Yeah.
Because that was to do that easy comp and such. I think, honestly, we are pretty stacked up on wide receivers with 2 double stacks for Lamar and Kyler. I think 3 tight end build is most likely. And speaking of likely, that'd be a great number 3.
Yeah. Exactly. 100%.
So, if we're playing on that likely.
The way to sometimes that you have to take him as your number 2 just because of ADP stuff with likely, depending on site and whatnot. But Everett here is great for me.
For me, the ADPs of rounds 15 to 18. Like if I've got to reach to get my stack around early back there, it really doesn't matter for me. So we're grabbing Gerald Everett here, which I think is just solid. Yeah.
One of maybe my highest owned tight end this year. No, Hunter Henry. Sorry. Hunter Henry is my highest owned tight end by a wide margin. And then Everett and Hawkinson might be my next 2.
Yeah. Looking at the QBs that went in between, there was only Jordan Love and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson substantially ahead and got a Greg Dulcich stack. So not expecting he would have taken Jordan Love here. Did they grab Watson? They got Watson to the stack there. I think most likely we would have had Kyler fall, but again, we don't know because as you said, he's a guy that someone would be happily grab just as a naked.
It's hard to tell how people would go about things there.
The
ADP variance on these like quarterbacks that are like 15 or 16 in ranking through 27 or whatever in terms of how many get drafted is so wide. Like Jordan Love, you talked about there in the 13th round. I got him in the 18th round of draft last night. It was like a Jalen Hurts team, and at the end he's just sitting there because nobody took him, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll take him as my last pairing with Hurts. I took him unstacked, but it was just like
Kenny Pickett, pick of the draft was someone tweeted that today. I was like, wow, I love Kenny Pickett too. Okay, let's start thinking if there's correlation aspect. I'm going to throw MVS just up here. I think he is a streaming value with Hopkins signing.
Yep, MVS would be my lead there. There would have been a conversation for Gainwell for me just because of the stack we've built out with Kyler, but he's gone.
Like that. So I would have definitely, I think, gone Gainwell.
Yeah.
I'm not pushing for it now, But I do think, like, if you wanted to go Mostert, maybe later on, if he was to fall, that's another example where I'm okay with grabbing the 2 Dolphins because it is a bet that Dalvin doesn't sign there, and now both of those are are strong values. Yep. Mostert is probably the much larger value than A-Chain. But we'll see. We'll see. And Jeff Wilson, even though I said it, I have no. Oh, he already.
I actually have a decent bit of Jeff Wilson, but it's all through DraftKings. It looks like I have 13% of my overall portfolio on Jeff Wilson, but it's like less than 5% on Underdog.
Yeah. So early on in the season, I was drafting Jeff Wilson and before Raheem Mostert. Early on after A-Chain got drafted, because my thought process was A-Chain and Mostert, same skill set. Like if A-Chain rises, then Mostert falls. Wilson kind of be complementary. But the more you look into Wilson's success, it's almost always volume-based. And when someone else is injured and he gets the backfield to himself, or at least in the more recent time period, has aged a bit. And so that's just not really what I want to make a bet on when there's other guys going around him. Usually, I mean, his ADP is like, what, 182?
Yeah.
182.3. Yeah. Like, I don't know. There's other guys that I like around him that I'd rather have.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. A couple more questions that were coming in. No, I don't think that people. Well, okay. I'd say very rarely. I think for the most part, people are just paying attention to their own team. And what I would say the quote is, do not confuse malicious intent with incompetence. Something like that is the quote. At the end of the day, like if someone snipes your person and you go to them and you see like they didn't have anyone correlated, like I don't think they were doing it to piss you off.
The exception is when David Kitchen snipes Lamar from me, and then I decided in a $10 DK draft to take every Baltimore skill player after that, just to make a point. Look, the $10 was well spent, knowing the entertainment value that I was getting out of. I don't even know what he was doing on the other side of the screen, but I envisioned the tilt that was going on through the other side of the screen. So very occasionally, but only when there's very close friendships and bragging rights at stake. F off, kid.
I take my answer back. I mean, I was gonna say like even being a streamer, like I feel it, and I do know like I've had someone DM me once before. He was like, "Hey man, did you like that I sniped your guy in that draft? Wasn't that funny?" I was like, "Are you serious?" Like, but the good news is there's enough people streaming nowadays that like. Other people are going to react worse than I am. I think someone in Discord referenced or whatever that like when I get sniped, I give I give a sigh, and I was like,
sigh.
That's right. Like I definitely do that. Well,
I can feel some of those sighs in the 555s. I can feel them through the screen.
The Dan Zach when he sniped me on Burrow when he already had an elite QB before, and I was just like, "What are you doing?" And he's like,
"Well, you guys have that, right?"
Dan Zach's joining me next Thursday, so I can ask him directly on stream. We'll have some fun there. He's like, you mean the guy that was like a round and a half value? Yeah, but it's a round and a half of DK value based off a slot of 34. That's not value.
So good. So good.
Raheem Mostert went there. We don't need to make that decision. Both other Dolphins are gone. Thinking through, we have 2 of these slots for a tight end, and then probably one for a running back, one for a wide receiver. Let me look at where we are in the draft again. 202, you could probably get likely. 183 would be a bit of a reach. Let's see what's available.
I think you try to wait for 202 in that spot, but we'll see.
I agree, because if I miss him, it's not the worst. And I think there's some guys that we're probably going to want to be targeting here.
I'd probably be going. Knox or Reed would be the choice here for me. The only Knox or Reed would be the choice, and Knox allows you a little bit more flexibility because you're only taking one wide receiver the rest of the way. So Knox would be great.
I think I'd go Knox, and then now we definitely don't go likely here because if someone does snipe our likely, like it's fine. We still feel pretty good about our others. I don't know. No Minnesota bring back either for the Green Bay, so it's nothing that.
Well, you could create it. You could create it with Reed and then Chandler, but
That's fair. That's fair.
That's one I end up creating a lot because we're higher
right
in the market on both of them. But yeah, that's the only.
What's your Gus Edwards thought for this team with Ravens?
Not so like it's fine if he's the best guy there, but I would not be personally reaching to stack it because my thought process is just I guess it would help in the regular season if Dobbins goes down or something, and you're just betting on the offense as a whole. But Gus Edwards' path to being a Week 17 winner does not align with what we've built at all in any way, shape, or form. And if he goes off, it's like taking away 3 of our guys from contributing.
The only way he goes off in a way that helps us if it's one of those efficient 10 carries, 120 yards touchdown, which we have seen before for him.
Yep.
But I agree, you're playing for a smaller outcome. Okay. If Jaden Reed falls to us, it's a little difficult to pass up considering we could still even maybe get Ty Chandler later. Looking at wide receivers, is there something else we want to consider? So Philly and Arizona is nothing. Baltimore, Miami's nothing.
Yeah. Reed
grab
looks good to
Jaden.
me. Yeah, Reed looks good to me there.
Okay. Yeah, I think this makes sense. Let's get likely in the queue.
Yep.
Just and people, I don't know, for like a queue standpoint and streams or whatever, but also sniping. Like if someone wants likely, it's perfect. It is what it is.
We've got a double stack. We've got 2 tight ends. We've got a bye week 13 tight end that's touchdown dependent already. Like,
likely's value really comes with the Lamar. My number one thing I want to be doing with my late tight ends on Underdog is stacking with QBs, because the way that these late tight ends have value is through touchdowns, which directly correlates to a larger week for your QB. On DraftKings, very different. I'm looking for either higher roll opportunities, someone who can actually increase their target volume. Like, you don't need to stack nearly as much, especially with a late tight end on DK as you do for Underdog.
Tannehill round 16 is interesting. I'm interested to keep an eye on the Tannehill ADP this next week and see where it goes, because he has been especially in the 20 round drafts, he has been kind of a staple for me because I've been drafting a lot of Treylon Burks. I've been drafting an okay amount of Chig. It's a tight end, middle round tight end is a tough build for me generally, but I'm interested to see that Tannehill, the Tannehill ADP.
And I mean, look at here. He has Hopkins. He has Treylon Burks. Makes complete sense that you draft Tannehill a little earlier to get him. Because again, I'm of the opinion that, who would you have drafted here instead that you can't draft here unless there's a player that was like, okay, there's a correlating player that I really want for my team. I don't know. Who's your other QB? You got Diggs. You got Geno. Maybe Noah Fant. Maybe you were like, this is my chance to get Noah Fant. Yeah. But actually, I think they're probably going to be
planning on that. I think they're planning on that. Yeah. That's a good draft.
And if we look at the 2, so Noah Fant's at 212, which means not even getting that draft that often. Tannehill's ADP is probably similar, but Tannehill is the hotter commodity right now and more likely to have wider variance given the Hopkins news. So I think that was the right choice there, Patrick Barnes, to go with Tannehill here and
also
Noah Fant here.
Also just like tying up if you miss out on your
quarterback, whatever,
compared to missing out on your tight end for your stacks, it's a little bit different on the value scale.
I mean, at what point, if he misses Tannehill here, do you go Will Levis at 209?
Buddy, you sniped me in a 555, my first one of the year on DK, that I thought I got into such a good room. It was like a late Friday or Saturday night. And we had like 3 auto drafters in the room and the quarterbacks were flying. And you took Tannehill as your quarterback 3, and I had to take Levis as my quarterback 3. And then I think I might have even taken Brissett as a quarterback 4. My quarterback 1 was like Pickett. It was the rest of the team was so good because everybody was auto drafting, but the quarterbacks were flying crazy. So I have been sniped by you on Tannehill earlier.
Did I have any Titans?
You did.
Okay.
You did. I think I had Chig and you had Burks, I think is what it was. And I didn't realize it when I let him go by around, and I was like, as soon as I looked at the board, I was like, oh no, I made a terrible mistake.
DK, all the quarterbacks go. If you're a starting quarterback, you will not be available in round 20 of DK or at the end of the draft. Yeah.
Well, Tannehill, you were for like the last 2 weeks. You were able to get Tannehill around 20 some. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. I think you're going to have your quarterbacks by round probably 18 in a week or two is my guess.
All right, likely went here. Ty Chandler goes here. Yep. Not the greatest for us, but still some options available.
It's fine.
Tight ends. I mean, there's
McBride
so many here.
McBride would make my queue.
McBride's perfect for this build,
Yep.
actually. Honestly, he's probably a better pick than likely, given what we're building here.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're pretty similar. A little bit more bye week diversity, which the bye week bros will celebrate, as I do. But yeah, I think it's very similar in terms of the value to the build.
Yeah. Okay. Coming around, we think 5 running backs,
yes.
4 running backs.
There's 2 tight ends that are needed, or at least 1 tight end that's needed there on the team in 12th. Who's their solo tight end? Cole Kmet. That could be a 2 tight end spot.
I agree. Definitely going to be doing that. Even this super center could go a 3rd tight end. So let's grab Trey McBride.
This is why it's really important to know, like, and check that draft board to know what you're dealing with here, because the ADP doesn't matter at this point.
All right. And we are down to just a running back.
Yeah.
A couple guys I actually don't hate. Got some old Dusties. Take a look real quick. Super center goes Jimmy G. Motorboatin. SOB. That's a good one. All right. What are we doing? I've been missing on chat. What is going on, chat? Thank you, Olaf. I've been trying to do some DK streams as well, mixing in amongst these ETR, because now that they have a draft board, it just makes it a lot better viewing experience. So happy to do some of those as well. And I do think like majority of people are drafting on both, so hope it's helpful. Glad it's helpful. Gosh, you could do entire article streams just on the differences, like in real time from an ADP, from a strategy.
And I was gonna say, when we were talking about that AJ Brown discussion, I feel it's very different on DraftKings and on Underdog. Like, I'm okay with the 9 and like, what is it, 16, like Brown Hurts combination if you need to, because quarterbacks are going to go earlier on DraftKings anyway. Those elite ones, you get 1 and you only need 2 the rest of the way. I do not have a strong preference on anybody here. CPAT, a guy you go into with Bijan on the same team?
No, I'm just looking through right now. CEH, but we don't have Cincinnati.
Yeah.
New England, we have Dawson Knox. Kareem Hunt is a wild card.
Best. It's probably the best. I'd probably take Strong or Hunt. The only knock on Strong is same bye week as Bijan, but it's not a big deal.
That's small.
Yeah. But so like on DK, for example, the Brown Hurts, you have no chance at getting Devontae back on that, almost none, because he goes pretty early on DK. But you you're like saving yourself a roster spot on QB on a site that you can get boxed out of QBs. So I don't mind that as much. Whereas on UD, I'm the Brown Hurts stuff. I just can't get myself to pass up that skill player there. Like, I can make up with skill player quantity on DraftKings better than I can on Underdog, is the way that I think about it.
Interesting. I'll have to think more about that, because I've been even more like fade the elite QBs on DK, because the pocket passers can get 300 and kind of make up for the lack of ground game, and 3 QBs can kind of make up for it. I don't know. Like, one thing I was thinking about this morning was with regards to drafting a guy like Tyreek Hill or Cooper Kupp and then going with an elite QB. And I think it's like the wrong play, because I think both of those go for it.
That I have not done very much. So my elite QB stuff is almost entirely tied to the first round, with the exception of Mahomes. Sometimes I'm tying to Chase. Like, if the Kelsey drafter passes on Mahomes, I sometimes will tie Mahomes to Chase and try to get a Mahomes, Chase, Higgins, and then add in Tony, Sky Moore, Valdes-Scantling, and build it out that way.
Yeah, because what happens is, like, it feels like a lot of times these elite QBs are falling to that 3rd round when you have Tyreek and Kupp. And so I had Kupp and I grabbed Josh Allen in one. But the more I thought about it was, for Cooper Kupp to actually be the elite guy that wins me the leagues, I should be drafting Matthew Stafford, because if you know Cooper Kupp is like wide receiver 1 of the year, that means Stafford's healthy and he's a screaming value. And so I should basically say, hey, I'm devoting less capital at the QB position because I know I'm going to be getting a good hit later on with Stafford. And I think Tyreek, same thing. Tyreek finishes wide receiver 1. Tua was probably healthy and doing really well. And you don't want to be, I guess you could go Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford, like throw in a Higbee or something.
Yeah.
But like you're wasting a little, but like definitely Tua, I don't want to. So just something I was thinking about with regards to like where the drafts are lining up and these QBs falling that mid-third. Even though I really like that QB in a vacuum as like pick 30 Josh Allen, it probably doesn't make sense for me to do it when I've got one of those two guys. But
yeah. I think the point on Kupp and Stafford is really strong. I probably do not have enough of my Kupp tied to Stafford. I probably need to be more intentional on that.
I think that makes sense. Yeah. And honestly, I'm probably the same way. But like, that's something that is intentional is the correct word. Like you've got to think through it. Honestly, the ADP, let's see how it lines up real quick. Average 151. Cooper Kupp is 5. 151 gets you here.
It's around there.
Definitely works, but like you feel like you're reaching if you're going before. What is tough is Tyler Higbee's ADP is this.
Yep.
A lot of people will draft Higbee Stafford here.
So you almost have to be aggressive on Higbee.
144. Yeah. And Stafford is 151. So you almost want to play for, all right, let me at 140 draft Higbee ahead of time. And now that's going to pretty much lock Stafford in for you. Could like the Van Jefferson, but like those are where you should pay attention to the draft board and see where it is. But maybe now I'm going to, next time I get Kupp, think through, all right, pick 140, 139, wherever I get Kupp, I'm going to grab Higbee. And then that should give me Stafford here. And that's a pretty nice stack.
Yeah.
Well, this was fun. All right, chat. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I see a couple questions about doing another one. I will be back on Thursday at 2 p.m. with 2022 World Series Poker Player of the Year, Dan Zach, and also known as the Mr. 4, maybe even 5 tight end guy. We'll be bringing him on, talking through his simulations, his strategy, our bet. Should be a fun show. Dink, what's going on with you with this just downtime? What are you doing the rest of the summer? I know you're not really putting out best ball content, but you still got some kind of tidbits and stuff on Twitter and stuff. What should people pay attention to?
You can check out the Established Run NBA podcast. We're still dropping that twice a week. We recorded an episode earlier today, myself and Mike Gallagher. So Established Run NBA is the Twitter account and the podcast or wherever you get your podcasts. But as I get deeper and deeper into the best ball streets, I feel like I have more takes that I can actually get out there and get nuanced. And so I'll do stuff like this. I'll be on Twitter, occasionally firing off a few takes, but I will always be in the lobby. You can find me there. DraftKings, Underdog, FFPC. I'm in the streets.
I love it. All right. Well, this is fantastic. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Brian, I see this question. We are out of time, but tag me on Twitter with a screenshot of your team, and I'd be happy to kind of give my thoughts on there as well. Appreciate everyone tuning in. And on that note, have a great Monday. Have a great rest of your week. And I'll see you all on Thursday. Later.